Sorry, my camera cut out. There's a pretty large age gap between me and the romantic twin that I have. Maybe this is why it could be, as I say, the thing about twin flames as well is they just make you have these realizations of like, because they're mirroring to you what your experiences that you don't consciously know of. And I think potentially this could be why I have a much, like, I have a stable relationship with my twin who's a friend, because we are more of a, like, with that we 1 year apart, so potentially our interactions have been a lot more, and obviously we incarnated at the same time, so we've sort of had that same life experience that will help us interact on a more kind of, like, more easily, I suppose, because you can see where that is going to come from, and as I say, this experience I'm having, they're of the same way. There's about a decade gap, and I will say, when I did have my connection to the romantic twin, which I do have an age gap with, it was a very enlightening and eye-opening experience towards, and it helped me actually release a lot of my issues around my family, because I think a lot of the time, and this I think is sometimes generational trauma and stuff, because I think a lot of the time what can be the case for people that have unhealthy relationships with their family can come from an age gap issue, and having this age old schema of you have to respect those older than you, and not really knowing where those boundaries are crossed between family members. Do you know what I mean? And it can keep perpetuating experiences with really unhealthy, toxic, and detrimental individuals that you may have had blood ties with, karmic blood ties, unhealthy blood ties. And this is why having age gap in twin flame sets can be really, really functional. I'm sure for a lot of other reasons as well. Obviously, you've also got that sort of dynamic of the older being more grounded and stable, set, even to the point of potentially midlife crisis level. And then you've got a younger, which potentially quarter life crisis level, potentially like wanting to know about the world and wanting to integrate themselves into the world, learn about the world, become foresee the future to one degree or another of what that may look like, because my worldview changed dramatically when I had that age gap relationship with my twin, when I first had that interaction with them, because you see a side to life that you genuinely often don't have access to, being the age range that you are. And I think the same goes for the other way around. I think they were like bored with the age experiences that were being provided to them, and they were sort of over it, and they wanted to be young again. They wanted to have that liberty to one degree or another, or that sort of opportunity, which obviously you can still have, but to have that kind of, because I very much, I was like 20 or 21 when I first met them, so maybe 22. No, I don't want to say 20 or 21. So I was very much like college leaver energy. I was very much like, woo, like spring break type shit. Do you know what I mean? And they gave me a bit of a reality check. Okay, let's not say reality check, because that was a fuck ton of like trauma that went down there as well. Because I think there was this very much like, anyway, I don't really want to go into all that shit now, but there was very much like a bit of a, it was information I needed, do you know what I mean, to understand where I was. And I think that is possibly why I could appear much more mature than maybe I actually am, because I have had this sort of age gap level experience that has grown my worldview. And as I say, there's going to be a lot of reasons for that. And so I'm just I don't know if it's my intuition. Again, you can always be wrong. So as I said, if you told me that I was going to have this experience that I did, even with my first set of twins when I was a lot younger, before I understood the concept, before I knew myself well enough to understand that I was the same as them, I don't think I would have honestly said that I would ever have been at the place to kind of like handle that, because you don't. When you look back at how you are, and because you evolve all the time, like when I look back at my past self, even at age 19, I wouldn't have been in the space to have attracted my twin at that time, you know. And I'm very much in the space of like, yes, like this is what my intuition is telling me at this time. I feel like this merging experience is to kind of help me move on from the lack of contact I have with my twins at this time, and to be like, you can have this spiritual connection with a person and not have physical or sexual interaction with them. Like, it's not going to kill you, and you can have this profound soul connection with a person and not feel that you have to have those sort of interactions with them. And that is but you can also feel satiated with the connection, because I know that, and I'm 26, I'm not super young, like I'm not like dying to like settle down and get married at this time, but I also think that is something I do want in the future. I do want more kids and stuff, and I can't be having toxic relationships anymore. So part of me is also like kind of come to peace with the fact that that's okay. I don't want to be fighting with someone, or if they're my twin or not, I don't care. Like I can't be dealing with narcissistic abuse, basically. It's not something that, I mean, like I would, like if they came up to me and were like, do you want to hook up with me, I'd be like, yeah. But as I say, I don't think that's necessarily something that's going to happen, just because of the dynamics. They're all set up how they're supposed to be. They could do that, and they're more than welcome, but I honestly don't think that they would, because I just don't think it's just necessarily aligned. You never know. And I think sometimes, and again, I think nothing is out of the realms of me feeling uncomfortable to say shit, because I have to speak my truth. I do think sometimes, just so I can recognise where there's been past life soulmate partners and stuff, sometimes when I go on like dating apps and stuff, I think, oh yeah, I'll probably have some sort of like sexual experience with you, or like some sort of romantic relationship with you. Sometimes they are obviously two very different things. But I can sometimes, they sort of like stand out to me in that way. And I think sometimes when you interact with a person, you can kind of sense that as well. It doesn't always happen. Like the first relationship I ever had, I genuinely, and this is what why I can say that your view can change though. So sometimes, and it will stand out at different times for different reasons. Like with my first boyfriend that I ever had, when I first met him, I genuinely thought nothing of him. But then this is the same way I felt about my twin when I first met him. That wasn't illuminated within him for me to see, because I think the universe shows you, and your guides show you what you're supposed to see at the time that you're able to handle that. Something from knowing the twin flame dynamic romantically, because obviously I do have twins I'm not romantically involved with, but to have that dynamic with a soulmate, to have that dynamic with a twin, which can also be a soulmate. I have heard your twin can also be a soulmate. So obviously my twin, which I'm not in contact with, is not currently my soulmate, because maybe they are on some small level, but not on a physical like 3D level, because, or a very big part of like a 3D level, because they're not tangibly involved in my life and haven't been for a little while. What was I gonna say? But like, I think there was a lot of trauma for me revolving individuals that were like older than me in my childhood, just because I had older cousins which I interacted with, which were abusive, to one degree or another, not massively, but they still interacted in the narcissistic kind of dynamic to the point where it was punitive for me. And I had like sort of like outside influences of older people, that some were of meaningful and helpful mean, some of them not. And even like you know, sexual abuse experiences that I've had were not massively older than me, but still there's this like generational gap of like I'm this sort of like Gen Zennial, where I'm like somewhere between Gen Z and millennial, and I have traits of both. But I think sometimes there's this like generational gap which can be more clear to a millennial than it is to me as a Gen Z, having Gen Z traits and stuff. So I just think there's certain traumas that can be overcome. Like there's always that balance, and from something that I've learned from the twin flame dynamic as well is that it's not to serve the personal individual, it's to serve the collective, and it's not about having a personal relationship with a person when you're in that dynamic. Usually you do have one to one degree or another, which is why I'm kind of confused as to why I don't foresee that at this time, but I do believe that shit can change. But as I say, the because I say with my first boyfriend, I did not see him as a romantic partner at all. I saw him as literally just like another person, and then all of a sudden we went on a night out and we ended up like hooking up, and then we got into a relationship for like almost 2 years. And that was very like, and the way that happened, it was very much like even after we hooked up, I like wasn't like super like bothered about a relationship. It wasn't something that I really thought about, because I had a lot of stuff on and I was like, oh, and you know what, I just don't know if I'm like ready for that shit. And he was like, okay, well, just come and like meet me and you can hang out at the pub with me and stuff, which he was working at and all that. We started hanging out, and then we just ended up getting in a relationship because your feelings sort of change and evolve. And obviously at that time when I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for a relationship, I didn't have those feelings and I wasn't evolved to that place where I wanted to be in one. But then I had a really soul evolving experience with them. It wasn't a twin, it was a soulmate, and it was a past life soulmate I can now perceive. But I didn't see that from the off. It doesn't always work like that, which is why I'm sort of like, well, could this change? Do you know what I mean? Because as I say, being someone that has been romantically involved with my twin in this life, I can't assume that like, I don't know, as I say, I've got friends from the same set and obviously don't crave to have romantic relationships with them because that's not what they're designed for. Like, I think they're an attractive person. Anyway, I don't really want to go into all that shit now. But like, if you know where I'm coming from, it's hard to have that high level vibrational experience with a person if you've got that foundation and that physiology for that dynamic to resist that connection. But then it's like, or like not to desire that connection. I think in the universe you often eventually, like, if you desire something for long enough, it doesn't always happen. It's like, okay, well, I desire to be a millionaire. Do you know what I mean? But then you don't just randomly become a millionaire all of a sudden necessarily. But often if you desire something for long enough and you manifest it for long enough, eventually it does sort of happen if it's something that is supposed to happen. But I would say, as someone that has been very involved in this side of life where it becomes unhealthy, to have that limit. But then I just feel like it does have its limits. But I also think that they can be like, people have to push the limits as well though for you to get what you want. Like, shit's not just going to fall into your lap. So sometimes you have to find a way to push a limit in order to like attain an outcome. And I'm wondering if this is going to be like a very slow burn situation where like there is gradual progression towards physical. Because unless this shit just completely undoes itself and becomes irrelevant to my experience in the next season, which could tangibly happen, I don't think once you go through this sort of a merge that it just completely just dissipates, because I just don't think that that's just universally sound. The universe will do whatever it wants at the end of the day. But I don't foresee that happening. So therefore I'll probably still have the same level of connection with them as I do now, which means I'm trying to understand how there won't be physical interaction with that level of vibration. I'm just confused as to how the fuck that's gonna happen. But obviously I think eventually this shit does level out. Like I would say I do have like sexual desire towards my romantic twin at this time, but it's not something that like plagues my mind 24/7 consciously. It's more of like a you know, if they were to like call me and stuff and be like, okay, like I'd be like obviously very concerned, because we did have a really like chronic, like we had chronic problems and we had chronic like issues, let's put it that way. So like, but I would still obviously find them attractive, so I would obviously want to have that connection with them. But it's not something, as I say, because I've kind of come to peace with the fact that I've had to basically, it was actually a really hard thing, to be honest, once that I went in contact with them, to go through this phase of like really just going cold turkey on that side of shit, because I was like, I did have like, and it's a weird thing. They say this about the masculine as well, that the masculine and the feminine act very differently. So if you're the masculine, like you get very like, you kind of, what I've heard the term is cock the walls. You sort of just like prance about, you're not interested. Like the feminine is a very romantic experience, and it's a very sort of like profound, spiritual, enlightening, feminine, romantic experience, and it's very, very different to the masculine. The masculine very much gets like, there's aspects to both in each person, but when you're primarily, obviously you're going to be primarily one polarity or another polarity. When you're the masculine, you're very much like, you actually just want to go off and find other partners, and connect with other partners, and like sort of like, it's like a power thing, or like it's like I don't know if it's a power thing. It's like I don't know. That's how I've heard that manifests itself. And you know, and it's something that I experience as a masculine in part as well. Because I am the masculine in my swim team set, or the two of us, and this is part of, I think, maybe why this would manifest as well in the universe, because I think it gets to the point where, especially because I think as well, you do get to the point where like you have a lot of partners in terms of like soulmates and stuff, and then you will find that obviously in the universe, what you desire also desires you, so you can then make those connections quite comfortably. Often you can't, and I have had blocks, and this is another thing which you also have to experience, is like I did get really annoyed, and I have got really annoyed a few times, where like you have a solid, like for several years, and this was my twin actually in particular, sneaky link situation, and it's just, and then they become unavailable, and then you just are like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do now? And it's like, I've come very much to the place with God that like God will bring me whatever, you know, romantic physical connections that I need at the time when I need them, and that is going to be something that is up to God, and obviously I will seek out. But you know, it's not about having like, what I think I want I may not need, what I think I need I may not need, sort of thing. And it's important for me to stand in my own power and not to find my power through other people, do you know what I mean, or liberation or whatever that is. And I'm okay with that, do you know what I mean? I don't want to become some sort of like frenzied, you know, sexually frustrated lunatic, do you know what I mean? That is not where I want to be. But unfortunately, as the masculine, you do get very revved up, and you do get very like, you do desire to have that sort of side of things. It just is part of the natural swing of how that goes. But I think this can be like, as I say, part of the purpose for this interaction, if should there be no physical connection, which I can't physically foresee at this time, tangibly, though I can sort of imagine it, how that could unfold. The universe will make those choices, and your desires will align to that. And it's not that I wouldn't have the desire, but also my desire for my peace is stronger than my desire to have an unhealthy or detrimental hookup, especially with someone that I know I will have a foundation for, like, tangible, healthy, grounded, satisfying connection with in the past or the future. And as I say, a hookup is very different to like a solid, grounded marriage, relationship, kids, like ongoing stable home, shall I say. But you with this sort of dynamic, it's just such a delicate thing, because when you hurt them, you hurt yourself. So to have a toxic relationship in that way, it can be so damaging. And as someone that's had that, because the pull towards them is so strong, but it's something that I have really had to come to terms with, that the pull to them was so strong at a time, and I didn't have responsibilities that I have had more recently, and when we went no contact, my desire to hang out with them, even though I knew it would potentially end in conflict, was more powerful than handling the conflict, partially because I had a fuck ton of trauma around the conflict I'd had in the past, and it was maybe some cycles that I had to overcome. But at this time, I've dealt with so much of my trauma that having those sort of conflict provoking experiences, which inevitably will happen between a narcissist and an empath, is not something that I would put myself through. And I'm really of the place when it comes to relationships as well. Like, hookups are hookups, and they are what they are, and they're always going to be great. But I'd say there's more complexity when it comes to the twin flame dynamic, and also, like, if it's aligned, it's aligned, but whatever. It's like not, But when it comes to relationships, I'm really like, sometimes it's not satisfying. This is what I was finding with my twin. Like, it wasn't satisfying after a while, because I wasn't getting what I needed from them. When you've got someone with narcissistic personality, they're unable to maintain empathy for long periods of time. And when you're someone that's giving a stable amount of empathy and you're not getting that empathy back, it's just so unsatisfying, And a narcissist, they're addicted to the cycle of manipulating people and chasing people and attracting people and having this short-term dynamic, and then jumping to the next person and then mugging this person off and getting this supply there and getting this supply there. They're addicted to it. That's what they do. That's who they are. And when you're not like that, and when you're an empath, or when you're just a non-narcissistic person, this sort of behavior after a time, or at any time, if I'm honest, especially if you're empathic, it's so exhausting and it's so toxic to be around, because you just get so triggered by them, and it's not something I can genuinely tolerate. Like, I know that I will act out physically, because it's happened to me before. People try and drag me into this cycle, especially against my will. It's absolutely disgusting, honestly, and it does not end well for either party, I will tell you. It's absolutely horrible, and you have to. And I think when it comes to healing from narcissists, you accept that that's how they are, and you can honestly live, in harmony with them. But you also do have to integrate the fact that is how they are. And if you decide to engage in especially, and I think on a friendship level, it's easier to tolerate these cycles, but in a romantic relationship, it's not something that you can avoid, because you've got that consistent interaction with them. It's always going to be something that is going to show up, and it just gets to the point where it's like, I'm just over this now. Like, I need something that's going to have more longevity to it. Like, I can't deal with these toxic cycles. And they'll feel the same way. They can, I wouldn't say I don't know, potentially they'll find it boring. They'll lack chaos. They don't like that. They like the chaos. They like the up and the down and the, bouncing around from this and that and the other. And they'll want to start shit to create that chaos that they crave, that they need, that high energy supply experience. They do that. and in the love bombing process, it's beautiful. Do you know what I mean? It's really nice because they just understand what you need and what you want, and they provide it in abundance. But as I say, after a time that will end, and you get to the place of the and I think it depends. There's different types of narcissists, and obviously relationships I've had with narcissists in the past. You get to a place where you sort of are able to like um like tolerate them, not tolerate, but like accept them, and love them anyway, but not maybe to have a physical relationship with them in this life. It's the way that the universe has ordained it, because in this life you're not supposed to have a long-term relationship with them. That is a nice way to look at the fact, if you break up with a narcissist that you have cared about and that you do love, that it's like, okay, well, the universe has ordained it to this place where I'm not supposed to have, like, you've got this personality disorder, should I say. This personality disorder is in the way of our relationship to whatever degree or another. And my empathy, should we even put it in? No, I'm not going to, because my empathy is not a disorder. Narcissism is in the middle of our relationship right now, because this is not supposed to be something that is in our soul contract, or in my soul contract, or in your soul contract in this life. But it may well be in another one where that is either something that we both deal with or that no one deals with, And I think I always feel like regression and past life regression is something that really helps me come to peace with, or has done in this last experience I've had, come to peace with like the connection I've had with them in the past, and it kind of helps me savor that to the place of like, okay, well, it won't be long now till I can like reconnect with them properly in the physical, where it's healthy. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that's what kind of sustains a lot of long-term unhealthy relationships, because the narcissistic abuse cycle basically. And as I said, I'm not hating on anyone that's in relationships with narcissists, because one of my friends he's my best friend, that twin, I would say, yeah, it's sad, but it's true, that, he's a narcissist to one degree or another, but it's not something that really bothers me, and to have, to have like, like sorry, zone out for a second. To go into those regression states, you can sort of, as I say, make peace with the fact that, because in terms of universal contrast, you've only got your share of like energy from each individual person. And I think this is something that because though I've had other relationships since my twin, barely, I've definitely had like very, very short term, I've had several short-term relationships since my twin, is still something that sort of hangs over my head of like, because you've got all this mythology in the world of like, oh, they're like your perfect partner, you're definitely going to be with them. And I'm not trying to take away from the fact that your twin is like your perfect partner and stuff, but I also just don't think it's always ordained in this lifetime to happen. And I think a lot of the time when people are in union with their twin, is also because the universe ordains it. And I think a lot of people take away from the fact, because potentially they're not awakened enough to understand that the universe will choose cyclically, and there is a pattern to it, that you are supposed to only have a specific interaction with different people, and in particular soulmates. Let's not talk about the everyday individual, because a lot of them just don't even matter, honestly, at all. They're just like walking nothingness. In particular soulmates, you're supposed to have an ordained interaction with them due to your soul's evolution, and it's actually mathematical to one degree or another. If you do the past life regression and you understand the patterns, and you see the kind of repeating patterns when it comes to understanding your regressions with them, you can almost sort of depict from a logical mind as to why you would or wouldn't have a romantic connection with them, or a physical connection with them, or you would, for whatever reason. But as I say, I think the universe will also line up with your desires. So, or like circumstances, even. You know, sometimes things are literally physically made impossible. It's physically made impossible to connect with a person simply because they'll block you. That's a form of being physically, like the universe making it physically impossible for you to connect with them. Or, you know, whatever reason, there's hurdles in the way to the point where it's not really logistically easy, at the very least, to find, or at the least, you know, in some way or another, to have a connection with someone, even though you desire it. But sometimes this can be the lesson as to what am I actually, and then you ask yourself in your mirror, okay, well, I want this person to bring me this, and this. And it's like to journal that and mirror that and be like, okay, well, do I need this, and this? If the answer is no, then sweet, we know it's unhealthy patterning that we can cross the fuck out, or we can find it in other things if it is something that's necessary. Do we need it in excessive amounts because we aren't able to give it to ourselves? Do you know what I mean? You know, the universe will bring you lessons and bring you transcending experiences for things when you need it. It's important, you know, because this is how you find yourself. Like, the world will give you so many images of yourself. It will give you so many, like, versions of yourself. It will give you so many, like, expectations, often for the detriment through narcissists and stuff. And I think a lot of, even being an empath in particular, and actually narcissists that I've seen, is that not all of the bad rep they obviously get is going to be true. There's been many narcissists that I've connected with in the very, very short term in the past that have been narcissistic, but they also hold traits in them that I hold in myself. So we're like the same. We have that sort of kindred spirit, sort of synchronistic experience. Because I definitely have met people where we're synchronistically going through the same experience. We are basically the same energy synchronistically. Because like there are traits of different people in every person. You're obviously going to get that trait occur more than once. Having those same experiences. But there may still be like some reason as to why you may not hold a friendship or something in this lifetime because of things like narcissism that come up, which make that honestly a massive roadblock and an obstacle, shall we say, to having a healthy, grounded relationship, which often means that the universe is saying it's not supposed to be that way in this lifetime. It may well be in another one, which I think is why people get stuck in these relationships, because they think, okay, well, we have this connection. Yes, you do have this connection, but it may not be from this lifetime. You may be trying to force a connection in this lifetime. It's not say you don't have that connection. I'm a genuine believer if you have a soulmate and you have past lives with someone, and your body holds the score. Do you know what I mean? If you can't get away from the fact that you've had lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of marriages and kids with a person. You just can't escape that. If you have the feeling, you have the feeling. You know what I mean? And that's why I don't think every soulmate you get married to, I can't lie. I don't think every soulmate you have kids with, I can't lie. But many of them you have both. And you will find that you will choose to have these relationships with more or less in different lifetimes, for various reasons that you can probably come to understand if you do the regression or you think into it a little bit. You have these sort of profound experiences like the twin flame one that I'm talking about, and the merging and stuff. But as I say, yeah, it's a weird one because I think life can change on a dime, and I do think that like there may be something in this in terms of like, I'm not talking about like, but the whole empath narcissist dynamic of like, you know, can that be something that can be balanced through the work? Do you know what I mean? Or is that just another myth? I think it can be balanced, but I think also potentially in romantic relationships is something that you might have to kind of manage, and some people are able to do that through their whole lives. Do you know what I mean? And it's beautiful, but a lot of other people can't, like myself. in romantic relationships, that wouldn't be something I could handle. So, and also there are a lot of self-aware narcissists that are self-aware enough that they can manage their narcissism to a space that it doesn't affect an individual to the point where it's going to harm them, you know, as well. And that's really special to have happen. And then you've got that sort of like foundation which everyone kind of looks for. It's not always something, it's the first thing that attracts you to someone. And I'm not trying to give relationship advice right now, but I think once you've had enough burns, you start to think, okay, well, if this hasn't got the foundation that I need, it's just not going to be something that I can even fuck with, basically. But as I say, one thing that I've learned about the twin flame dynamic is that it's like dragging you through a hedge backwards. You will not understand why something is happening and unfolding in the way it does until a fuck ton later. And you're like, oh yeah, shit, that's why this had to go down the way it did. And you're like, why did this happen like this? Do you know what I mean? Why I wanted it to be planned out so strategically. If it was down to me, this would happen, and then this would happen, and it would be so strategically planned, and I would love the order, you know, but it often just doesn't work like that. It's like dragging you through a hedge. It fucking drags you down into massive holes, and it brings you up into the heights of God only knows where. And that's the twin flame dynamic for you as well. That's not one narcissist that does that. That's the dynamic. It drags you in every fucking direction, and it twists it pretzels you, and it's a lot. It's a lot. So I'm just gonna end it there because I feel like I'll ramble forever, but this has been like 2 hours over 2 videos of me talking. I feel a lot better, so thanks for listening. Peace.